I enjoy humor. I think humor can be healing. Um, this humor may be a little dark for you, but I'm going to offer it up anyhow. A fellow in a small town had a little manufacturing plant, and he made nails. It's called Benson's Nails. I thought, I wonder what I can do to kind of, increase my business a little bit. And he remembered a friend of his who was an advertising exec and called him up and he said, hey, can you develop something for me that we can show on local cable TV here and maybe increase my business? And I said, yeah, I'll come up with something. So a week later, he comes over to Benson's Nails and takes out his laptop and lifts it up and pushes play. And there's a cross on the ground, and there's this man that looks a lot like Jesus being nailed to this cross. And a Roman soldier turns to the camera and says, we use Benson's nails. They'll hold anything down. Guy looks at it and he says, oh my God. He said, I know it's that time of year and it's a timely ad, but he said, it's not going to fly. People won't like it at all. He says, come up with something a little different. A week later, the ad exec comes back in and lifts up his laptop and pushes play. And there's a Roman soldier there. In the background is a man that looks like Jesus hanging on the cross. Camera comes into the soldier and the soldier says, we use Benson's nails. They'll hold anything. Guy says, man, you can't use the crucifixion. It's just too graphic. People don't like that. One more time, give it a try. The ad exec goes back. A week later, he comes back and has his little laptop, lifts it up, pushes play. And there's this naked man, ragged looking, long hair, running through the field, blood all over him. And here comes a bunch of Roman soldiers chasing after him. All of a sudden, one of them stops and says, if only we had used Benson's nails. Anyhow, death. Death is going to grab each one of us. And we've got a number of names on our side altar over here already of people recently who have died either by their own hand or by disease. The one thing we don't know is, for the most part, how will we die and when will we die? Now, family history and lifestyle sometimes will suggest how it is that you're going to die, not necessarily when. My family, for instance, on my dad's side, everybody strokes out, and that's how they die. Cancer is not a thing in our family, my mom's side either. But stroking out is the big thing. So I have a feeling that that's a good way that I'll probably go, since I deal with high blood pressure and cholesterol. And that's probably how I'll go when the time comes. When that time is, I don't know. And what happens next? What happens next when we do meet our demise? I watched a movie a few weeks ago called Passage to India. And it's the story taken from a book of 1920s British colonialism in India, and the native Indians starting to rebel against the hand of the British colonials. And there's this old English woman. She's in her 70s. And she's kind of just watching everything as it passes along and whatnot, the good and the bad. And she says, I think most of the time we're just passing figures in a godless universe. Just passing figures in a godless universe. And she goes on to suggest that everything is meaningless. Look at how small we are compared to the universe. I mean, we're nothing. We're like little ants to us. And she implies that we're born, we live, we die, end of story. There is nothing else. And maybe that's the case. I don't know. But I have my beliefs and I have my experiences. And my experience would suggest that there is something beyond physical death. Now, it's called by a lot of different names. Of course, today Christians are celebrating Easter, the resurrection of a human being, Jesus Christ. Jesus, who later became the Christ that had been prophesied in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. Resurrection, it's a powerful word, a big word, kind of a misunderstood word. Resurrection is also known as anastasis. Ana simply means no or without. It doesn't happen. And stasis, static, still, quietude, absolute quietude. And when you apply that to biological systems, stasis means it's gone, death, because biological systems can't stay static. They're in constant movement. There's constant energy making things change and shift. So it's without stasis. And that's what resurrection means. To be reanimated, to be re-energized. That system gets going again. Now, most Christians and the Bible would suggest that there is bodily resurrection, reanimation. I don't know. From everything I've experienced in my 77 years, I have some doubts about it. But it may happen. Maybe at the end of time it happens, as there are some Christian suggestions. But the soul, the human personality, that thing that makes each one of us who we are, who people recognize us as, that may well go on after the physical body dies. I just don't know in what way, shape, or form. But what I do know, as a follower of Buddha Dharma, this stuff makes a lot of sense to me. But first, what's the next most common word for what happens after death? Probably reincarnation. People use that word a lot, reincarnation. And in fact, the early church, Origen, around the year 200 of the Common Era, actually believed in reincarnation. Unfortunately, a couple of hundred years later, he was considered a heretic and kicked out of the church. But he talked about the transmigration of souls, how they go from one body to the next. Well, reincarnation was an idea that developed in pre-Hindu, in the Vedic and Upanishadic tradition, before the Hindu tradition really got established at the time of the Buddha. And it said that the Atman, the soul, the self, the thing that makes Lisa, Lisa, goes from lifetime to lifetime. Lisa stays Lisa in this body, and she stays Lisa, but she's got a new body. And then there's another body, and then there's another body. And that same core of Lisa, that same personality that is Lisa, keeps working on her karmic tendencies, trying to live a little bit better life each time that she's reborn. That's the Hindu ideal. The soul is reborn time and time again, as it is, meant to improve itself within a different body. And then there's the two terms that we Buddhists use more often than reincarnation are rebirth and rebecoming, which could still suggest a soul that is reborn or is rebecoming, but it's just a little looser type of term, because the Buddha, remember, said there is no Atman. There are 5 different things that change, 5 skandhas. There's a body, form, there's feelings, there's thoughts, there's mental formations, and there's consciousness. And everything is changing and shifting. And when the body dies, these other 4, what happens to them? Well, they're not an Atman, because you need everything. A human is a total of everything physical and everything mental. So we tend to use the words reborn or rebecoming. So what re-becomes or is reborn? A lot of times you'll hear the word, it's a small piece of consciousness that goes from lifetime to lifetime that is reborn. And a word called Gandhaba, the Gandhaba is a word that I like. The Gandhaba is our karmic residue, our karmic debt, our karmic imprint that our life has left. And it's everything that's within our eighth consciousness, called the storehouse consciousness. This storehouse consciousness, or we might call it the unconscious or the subconscious, stores every event that's ever happened to us or we've done in our lifetime in little seeds called bija, B-I-J-A. And those seeds, there are some seeds that are real skillful seeds. And if we water those, our karma, our thoughts, our speech, our actions improve. If we water those negative seeds, those experiences we've had, well, then we water unskillful actions, be they thoughts, speech, or deeds in our lifetime. And it's that karmic imprint from our subconscious or our unconscious that goes from lifetime to lifetime. A new body, but certain tendencies, certain traits continue on, which is why some people, when they're 3 years old, they can play great piano concertos and they've never had a lesson. It's something, a trait that has continued on from some other lifetime. Which is why, as Buddhists, we believe that we can help those beings that have passed on. It's why we say the Bardo prayer. Now, Bardo is actually a Tibetan word, and Bardo just means intermediate state. Bar, intermediate, transitional, do, a path or a state or a way, intermediate way. And there is a book that Tibetan Buddhists wrote. Supposedly it was written in the 8th century, but and it was buried and only found in the 13th century. Who knows? It could be. You know, there were in Christianity found the Gnostic Gospels, you know, hundreds of years later, buried in a cave in Egypt. But it's in English, it's called the Tibetan Book of the Dead. In Tibetan, it's called Bardo Todal. And Todal just means liberation through hearing. All of us know, or most of us hopefully know, that when you're dying, hearing is considered to be the last thing that goes. You can have a person laying there completely in a coma, completely apparently unconscious. They can't feel anything, they can't taste anything, they can't see anything, but they can still hear. Which is why when a friend of yours or a loved one or you're with someone who's dying, you should always make a move to speak gently with them, encourage them in their journey. And that's what the Bardo Todal is all about, encouraging people as they're dying to choose wisely, and especially at that moment of death, when all of a sudden, all of this karmic imprint is going to come into fruition. There's considered to be six Bardos. The 3 that happen right at the time of death, and then you don't realize you're dead. And then there is, after a period of time, whatever that may be, it may be hours, it may be days, you realize, and I say you, I mean this Gandhaba, this karmic imprint, realizes that you're dead, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, you know, you're in, this is real. I am dead. You know, what is going to happen now? And then the hallucinations, the karma starts playing just like a cinema in your mind. And let me just read you something here. And I think I took the page out where it was. I did. Here we go. The Bardo Todal, this book, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, seems to be based upon verifiable data of human physiological and psychological experiences. And it views the problem of the after-death state as being purely a physical and psychological problem, and is therefore in the main scientific. It asserts repeatedly that what the percipient on the Bardo plane sees is due entirely to his own mental content, that there are no visions of gods or of demons or of heavens or of hells other than those born of the hallucinatory karmic thought forms that constitute his personality, which is impermanent. It's a product arising from the thirst for existence, from the will to live and become. From day to day, the Bardo visions change, concomitant with the eruption of the thought forms of the percipient, until their karmic driving force exhausts itself. Or in other words, these thought forms, born of our habitual propensities, being mental records comparable to the records on a cinema film, their reel running to its end, the after-death state ends. And the dreamer, us, the Gandhava, emerging from the womb, begins to experience anew the phenomena of the human world. The whole aim of this Bardo Total teaching is to cause the dreamer, the Gandhava, to awaken into reality, freed from all the obscurations of karmic or sansaric illusions, being born again and again, going around again and again, to realize we create our world. Dhammapada, page 1, twin verses. We create our existences. We create good. We create bad through our thought forms. So, we do the Bardo prayer. The Bardo prayer is a synopsis of this book right here. And there's chapters in here on day 1, which you're supposed to chant with the person who has just died. Day 2, day 3, day 4, on and on and on and on. The Tibetans are great at really defining the rebirth process and helping the Gandhava along. Our East Asian tradition is, we believe in it, but it's not considered, we don't do it to the extent that Tibetan Buddhists do it. Something interesting, and there are 2 different examples in the Nikayas, the literature, of course, that the human Buddha is thought to have spoken, where he refers to rebirth. And rebirth occurs because of craving. Because we want things to be differently than they are, we want more and more and more. Who wants to die? I want more of this good stuff. And so we want to be reborn and get more and more and more. And so the cycle continues, samsara, samsara, samsara. In the Mahayana tradition, we believe this can last for up to 49 days. In the Theravada orthodoxy, they believe the intermediate state is one thought moment. Death occurs, less than a second later, rebirth occurs. It's been developing while the person is dying. And there is no time, there is no Gandhava that goes for days or weeks that you can help along. It is immediate. So this is more of a Mahayana tradition, to chant people along, to help them along their path, to try and see clearly. Look for the bright light, stay away from the dim light. And we'll say the Bardo prayer, and this might all look a little bit more, little clearer to you as we do this later. Every night when I go to bed, I pray for people who are sick, who need help, and wish them well. And I chant to help myself go to sleep. And I generally do the 3 refuges in Sanskrit because they're fast and they're just repetitious, and it helps me get into a rhythm. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Buddha. It just helps me to be restful and fall into a nice sleep. Well, there are, besides death, the three bardos there that I referred to, there are three more bardos. There's the bardo of everyday life, when someone gets terribly ill, or somebody goes through a divorce, or somebody's in transition with a job like I am right now. My life is changing, and all of a sudden, what I did for 53 years, day after day after day, 47 years in one place and 27 years with one woman, my office manager, Elaine, all of a sudden, yesterday was the last day we saw clients. And now we're in the process of the next couple of weeks of closing it down. And believe me, this is a hell of a transition. I mean, it's all of a sudden everything that I thought about and considered and did, where my mind was focused, it's not there anymore. It's leaving me. And all of a sudden, this world is opening up. A little bit scary, but this world is opening up. It's like, what do I do now? I guess now I'm a full-time monk. And I consider, what do I do now? And who am I? So I understand that life transition real well right now. And then there's the bardo of meditation. Some of the best time that you can grow is if you're on a meditation retreat. When you get tired, when you get sleepy, when you get angry at yourself, when you ask yourself, what the hell am I doing here? What do I gain from this? And then all of a sudden something opens to you and you say, oh, that's why I'm doing it. Okay, now I see a little bit more clearly. And meditation is considered a really great way of transitioning from one way of seeing things to another way. And finally, the dream state. I mean, we all know what our dreams can do. I mean, sometimes I've got great dreams, and sometimes they're scary, or like, what's going on in my head? This is scary to think that's in there, but it is. So all considered, intermediate states, transitional states between this and that. A real simple way of doing it, and I like this. This is Dogen wrote this. Dogen was a 1200s. In fact, he wrote this about 100 years before the Tibetan Book of the Dead was written. And Dogen was the founder of the Japanese school, Soto Zen. And this is his premier work. And listen what he says about how we help people in the afterlife. This is called the chapter, The Heart of the Way. When you leave this life and before you enter the next life, there is a place called an intermediary realm. You stay there for 7 days. You should resolve to keep chanting the names of the three treasures without ceasing while you're there. After 7 days, you die into another intermediate realm and remain there for no more than 7 days. At this time, you can see and hear without hindrance, like someone with a celestial eye. Resolve to encourage yourself to keep chanting the names of the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, without ceasing. I take refuge in Buddha. I take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha. After passing through the intermediary realm, when you approach your parents about to be conceived, resolve to maintain authentic wisdom. See clearly. Keep chanting refuge in the three treasures in your mother's womb. Do not neglect chanting while you're being born. Resolve deeply to dedicate yourself to chant and take refuge in the three treasures through the 6 sense routes. When your life ends, your eyesight will suddenly become dark. Know this to be the end of your life and be determined to chant, I take refuge in Buddha. Then all the Buddhas in the 10 directions will show compassion to you. Even if, due to conditions, you're bound to an unwholesome realm, you'll be able to be born in the God realm or in the presence of the Buddha. Bow and listen to the Buddha. After darkness arises in your eye, continue to chant refuge in the three treasures until you enter the intermediary realm and go further. Thank you.